Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome back to another lesson. So today we are going to talk about subtracting fractions. And when we subtract fractions, it's much like adding them. We follow the same process, only we're subtracting. So let's start with 3/4 minus 1/8. So again, like addition, you have to get a least common denominator. In order to get these to be the same denominator, you got to figure out what that least common multiple for the denominator is. Well, we know 4 is a factor of 8, so it looks like 8 is going to be the least common denominator. So that's going to be equal to 4 times 2, because you have to multiply 4 times 2 to turn it into 8. But you'll have to do that to the numerator also, so you'll have 3 times 2. Then minus the 1/8, because the 1/8 is already in the least common denominator form. So you multiply 3 times 2, you get 6. 4 times 2 is 8. So you'll have 6/8 minus 1/8. Now, since you have the same denominator, you can go ahead and subtract. 6 minus 1 is 5. So 5/8 would be your final answer. And because you can't simplify it any further, so that's it. Alright, what's the next one? We got 5/6 minus 1/2. Alright, so 5/6 minus 1/2. Again, you need to find a least common denominator that's going to make both of these the same denominator. Well, we know 2 is a factor of 6, so therefore 6 will be your least common denominator. So you leave the 5/6 alone because it's already in the least common denominator form, but you got to turn that denominator of 2 into a 6, so you multiply it by 3. So you'll have 2 times 3 for your denominator. Then you have to do the same to the numerator. You'll have 1 times 3 for your numerator. So you work through with the multiplication. 5/6 stays the way it is. Work through your multiplication. 1 times 3 is 3. 2 times 3 is 6. So now you have 5/6 minus 3/6. You can actually go ahead and subtract them. So if you do that, you'll get 2/6. However, you could factor out a common 2 from the 2 and 6. So if you divide both the numerator and denominator by 2, you'll get 1/3. Because you factored out a common 2. And 1/3 would be your final answer. Alright, here's another one. We have 9/10 minus 3/100. 9/10 minus 3/100. So, again, find our least common denominator. Well, 10 is a factor of 100, so 100 would be your least common denominator. You're going to have 10 times 10 for your denominator for the first term, which means you'll have 9 times 10 as your numerator, minus 3/100, since 100 is already the least common denominator. Okay, so work through your multiplication. 9 times 10 is 90, over 10 times 10, which is 100. Then you'll have 90 over 100 minus 3/100. Now, since you have the same denominator, you can go ahead and subtract, which is going to give you 87/100. Which there is no common term to factor, so 87/100 would be your final answer. Got a few more here. So yeah, subtracting fractions, very much the same as adding for the procedure wise, only you're subtracting. Alright, we got 5/6 minus 2/3. So 5/6 minus 2/3. So find the least common denominator. 3 is a factor of 6, so it looks to be that 6 will be your least common denominator. So we can leave the 5/6 alone because that's already in the least common denominator form, but we need to turn that 3 into a 6, so we'll have to multiply that by 2. So you have 5/6 minus, in the denominator, 3 times 2, but we'll have to do it to the numerator, and 2 times 2 will be in the numerator. So now you'll work through the multiplication. You'll have 5/6 minus 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 2 is 6. So you'll have 5/6 minus 4/6. Since you have the same denominator now, you can go ahead and subtract. So 5 minus 4 is 1, and you have 1/6, and it can't factor any further, so 1/6 is your answer. Alright, got 2 more slightly harder ones. Let's say you have 1/6 minus 1/8. Well, here, 6 is definitely not a factor of 8. So what you got to do is find the least common multiple of the denominators. So we'll do the least common multiple of 6. What is 6 times 1? 6. 6 times 2? 12. 6 times 3? 18. 6 times 4? 24. Alright, then we'll take some terms of 8. 8 times 1 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 3 is 24. Well, lo and behold, we just found our least common multiple. It's going to be 24. So you could write the least common denominator equals 24. Write that on the side to aid your work of the fractions, to know what denominator you're going to need. So your least common denominator is going to be 24. So now we are tasked with converting these denominators into 24. How do you make 6 into 24? You multiply by 4. So you have 6 times 4 for the denominator, which means you got to do it to the numerator. 1 times 4 in the numerator, minus, how do you convert 8 into 24? You multiply by 3. Minus 8 times, alright, you have 8 times 3 as the denominator, which would be 1 times 3 for the numerator. Now you're going to work through all your multiplication. What is 1 times 4? Well, that's 4. 6 times 4 is 24. And then you'll have minus, what is 1 times 3? 3. What is 8 times 3? 24. Now that you have the same denominator, you can go ahead and subtract. So 4 minus 3 is 1. So denominator stays the same. Your answer will be 1/24. Alright, got one more here. We have 5/12 minus 3/8. Okay, well right away we know 8's not a factor of 12. It does not go into 12 evenly, so therefore it's not a factor. What we have to do, once again, is we got to find the least common denominator by finding the least common multiple of the two terms of the denominator. So find the least common multiple. We'll start with 8 since it's a lower number. 8 times 1 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 3 is 24. I think we can stop there. Let's find 12. Find some least common multiples of 12. 12 times 1 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. Well, we can stop right there. We found our least common multiple of 24. So the least common denominator is going to equal 24. Put that in the side to aid you here and knowing what your denominator needs to be. Now that you found your least common denominator, you need to convert the denominator into it. So, how do we convert 12 into 24? You multiply by 2. So the first denominator will be 12 times 2, but you got to do it to the numerator also. So you have 5 times 2 in the numerator. Minus, now we got to deal with the 3/8. How do you convert 8 into 24? You multiply it by 3. So you have 8 times 3 as your denominator, which means you got to do it to the numerator. You have 3 times 3. So now you're going to go ahead, work through all your multiplication. 5 times 2 is 10. 12 times 2 is 24. So you'll have 10 24ths. Minus, then work through the multiplication of the other term. 3 times 3 is 9. 8 times 3 is 24. Now that you have the same denominator, you may go ahead and subtract these. So 10 minus 9 is 1. You will be left with 1/24th. Those do not factor any further, and that is your final answer, is 1/24th. So yes, that is all I have for you here today. Next lesson will also be more variables with fractions. It'll be variables with fractions part 2. So get ready for that. Hope everyone has a good day, and again, Happy New Year. Take care.